The Liverpool fans will say, well, we can boo if we want. It's freedom of speech. You're all for freedom of speech, Jordan, so why would you want to criticise us for doing it? So then on the other side of that, why would they want to criticise Jordan Henderson for having his own mind? This is One-to-One with Simon Jordan. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, keep leaving the questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with this week's show. Do I think Manchester United won't make the top four? I think it's very unlikely that they won't. Okay, they've had a couple of results in the last week that haven't been particularly compelling, and obviously the noise gets around about David De Gea letting in a goal against West Ham. You have to give the performance to West Ham yesterday. United weren't at it, but I still think, given the fact they've got a game in hand, they've got points on the board, that it's going to be very, very difficult for Liverpool or Brighton to overtake them. Then you have to look at the balance of the season and say, what have we seen from United? Of course, at the beginning of the season, I made the observation that gets trotted out about Ten Hag and his suit. It wasn't about his suit, it was about his presentation. And the suit was the denotion of the fact that he didn't look like he was standing tall and standing strong. Clearly he's a capable manager. Clearly he's got very strong outlooks. And we'll see after the first season how he builds upon this. But yes, I think Man United will finish inside the top four. Do I think they're a good side? I think they're okay. I think they will be disappointed by the manner in which they went out of the Europa League to Sevilla, because that was a pretty poor performance, albeit they were 2-0 up and could have been sailing. And you've got to take the manager into consideration in that first leg where he let Sevilla back in the game by making substitutions, albeit the players that came on should have been able to enhance, not detract from the performance. I think there's still a way to go with United. I still think they've got to clean up some of the culture that's in that club, which has a tacit acceptance of not achieving the heights. Now, of course, if you haven't won a league for 10 years, it is 10 years now since United have gone a whole decade of not winning a league, and that is troublesome given the fact they were poster boys for the Premier League once. But I do think that there's more likelihood of Ten Hag getting them closer. They're still a way off Man City, and they're still a way off Arsenal. But they've got progress to make. I think they've got to square the circle of a great goal scorer, because in previous incarnations, whenever they have changed, whether it be Ruud van Nistelrooy, whether it be Andy Cole and Dwight York, whether it be Teddy Sheringham, whether it be Robin van Persie, whether it be to some extent Wayne Rooney, they've always gone and got people that can score lots of goals. And whilst Rashford has done well this season, I still maintain he's not a natural goal scorer, and people will probably suck in the air and go, what the hell are you talking about? Marcus Rashford is this, that and the other. But I still think they're a way off. I still think if you're looking at people like Bruno Fernandes as a captain, you can't put him in the same bracket as captains of the past, from Steve Bruce up to Roy Keane. Those are kind of embodying the spirit of Man United. So look, I think they'll finish fourth. I think Ten Hag's suit fits him just fine. So can we leave that question alone for everyone a day now? And I think that United will give themselves a decent platform to build for next season. He will have cut his teeth, he will have learnt the culture of English football, the attitude of the media, the disposition of the club, the expectation, and some of that he would have already known, but more of it he will have learnt. So we'll see a better United, having had a decent transfer window, and whether the Glazers own it or not, they'll still spend money on keeping the train moving forward, because that's the nature of the beast. They need to spend money to keep on progressing and keep on evolving and keep on buying players, because that's the model that all Premier League football clubs, certainly the top end of the Premier League, will always follow. So yeah, United will get in the top four. They'll get in the top four because other sides like Liverpool and Chelsea and Tottenham haven't been good enough this year. Trev, I mean, Declan Rice, this argument rages, and I've mentioned it a number of times about the difficulty I have with suggesting that he's worth 100 million quid. Yes, of course he's a good player. Of course he's a great central midfield player at times. Of course he's got bags of ability. And of course he's got lots of potential as well as the current ability. But this predisposition to suggest players are worth 100 million quid. First of all, I don't think any players are worth 100 million quid. But if we're going to move the argument back to the fact that players are being bought for 100 million pounds, I find it difficult to see, despite the fact you have great performances last night against a slightly off-balanced United in terms of they weren't very good, albeit they were made to be not very good by West Ham and their approach. I think Declan Rice, there's been observations made about him by Graeme Souness during the course of the season, who is a central midfield player himself, would know what a central midfield player looks like, that he worries about him falling in between two stools, he doesn't get further enough up the pitch, doesn't score enough goals, and wonders if he's a centre-back. Look, and I always think that during the World Cup, his first thought was to go back, but that maybe well be playing for the manager he was playing for. Look, you put him in a better side, and Declan Rice will look a much better player, albeit he's a very good player now. And of course, you've got him in West Ham side, so he shines and he stands out. Let's put him into a bigger club that have expectations of winning leagues or competing right to the death of big tournaments, and maybe we'll see. But going to the £100 million, I guess if West Ham have enough competitive tension in the marketplace between football clubs that may want to buy him, whether that's Chelsea, where people think is his natural home because of his relationship with that football club or his feelings towards it, or whether the people think that's Manchester City because they're winning everything and maybe Guardiola will add him to this stockpile of top players, whether they think it's Manchester United because him going in a kind of quarterback role and being influential and rebuilding Man United, then you'll create the jeopardy, then you might get the price tag because they'll be metaphorically cutting on one another's throats for the price. Personally, I think it's not a £100 million player, but the argument rages about Jude Bellingham and what he's going to go for. So the market will dictate. I would have thought he was below 100, but if the market forces are right, the clubs that are bidding are in and focused on wanting to get this player above the other clubs, West Ham may just get lucky and get £100 million plus. Well, I didn't see the Liverpool fans giving Jordan Henderson stick for singing the national anthem. Well done to Jordan Henderson for having his own mind, having his own view, and doing what he wants. We live in a society where the moment you pull somebody up, the Liverpool fans will say, well, we can boo if we want, it's freedom of speech. You're all for freedom of speech, Jordan, so why would you want to criticise us for doing it? So then on the other side of that, why would they want to criticise Jordan Henderson for having his own mind? He played for his country. A lot of these people that are influential figures in this football club, whether it's Kenny Dalglish, whether it's Ian Rush, and a list of other people, have all taken honours as a result of their involvement with Liverpool, and have all got gongs, which of course comes from the royal family. So with that in mind, there's a slight element of hypocrisy that they'll celebrate those people, but they'll castigate Jordan Henderson. Look, I can't say that watching that footage of the Liverpool fans booing, that it was something that I found impressive. They have their views. I didn't live in Liverpool in the 80s. I don't understand their resentment to the extent that that the royal family are responsible for what they consider the Tory government to have done in the 80s under Margaret Thatcher. I don't think it's a reasonable thought, but it's not my thought to have. I don't think it's impressive. I think Liverpool perhaps, and there's an argument saying why was the national anthem asked to be played at football stadiums. I can see the argument for, because this is a once in a lifetime event. It's something that's in the fabric of our country which makes us separate from the rest, and I think in certain respects makes us great, and it's something that should be celebrated. I dislike the idea of protesters going into London and protesting. If you don't like something, just don't be part of it. Just don't be part of it and try and hijack it for everybody else. So I don't find what the Liverpool fans did impressive, and I don't know why they'd want to boo one of their own, and someone that's been very significant to that football club. They want their freedom of speech. They want to have their slightly offensive and unpalatable outlook in this instance. That's their gift. Can't on one hand advocate for people to have the right to say things and then turn around and say, well, what you say I don't like, so I'm going to shut you down. So whilst I don't like it, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's pig ignorant, but I guess they'll say I'm pig ignorant by saying that because I don't know the circumstances in which they lived in. And given some of these will be 20-year-old kids that haven't lived in those circumstances, I'm not entirely sure what they're talking about. But it's their business, it's their outlook, it's their disposition. I'm sure they all enjoyed their bank holiday Monday off. But Jordan Henderson had the courage of his convictions in a world where people don't. So I think well done to him. And I think out of that afternoon, I think he's probably, in my view, for what it's worth, the only Liverpool connection that came out with any particular credit on that day. And they can boo, and they can boo as much as they want. Neymar is a remarkably talented player. I think he represents a generation of players at times that I don't particularly admire in terms of their show pony's marvellous ability. Wonderful player. Seems to be a handful at times. And an entourage that surrounds him. I saw an element of it in Qatar. The entourage headed by his father, and I dislike the idea of parents living vicariously through their children. I think it should be the other way around. To some extent, children should be supported by their parents, not supporting their parents, but that's a different conversation. To come into, and Messi, well look, Messi's at the end of his career. First of all, you've got the obligation of the wages, and people will make a pass about it and say, well actually 5, 6, 7, 800 grand a year, a year, hardly, is what goes with the territory, but it's preposterous. It's preposterous. And we just accept these things with some sort of flick of the hand, like that's Lionel Messi, he's well worth it. No, he's not. So coming into the Premier League at this stage in his career, the argument always raged about Messi. Could he do it on a wet Tuesday evening against Stoke? Well, that is an argument that raged when he was in his pomp. It's not going to change now, is it? Because he's a declining force. He's still a remarkable player. I wonder now if he'd be able to compete with the ferocity of the Premier League. You look at that game yesterday, Newcastle and Arsenal, and look at the pace, the ferocity, the physicality of it. And I wonder how Lionel Messi would stand up to that. Yes, he's a magician. Yes, he's a wizard with the ball. And ultimately, he'd still be able to have that first yard in his mind. But I don't see Messi, A, from the financial constraints, and B, who would want it? Who would want Messi in their side at this stage in his development? He hasn't really, despite the protestations, he hasn't really done what he's done previously at Barcelona, at PSG. So who are we talking about? Man City? Can't see it, despite the connection to Pep Guardiola. Liverpool? Can't see it. Man United? Categorically can't see it. They'll have been burnt by the Ronaldo experience. They won't want another prima donna in the building. So Messi, no. Neymar, it's a different animal. It comes with a load of baggage, that a very capable player that moved to PSG, that I don't think, despite the fact he will, on paper it looked like he's been a success there, I don't think he necessarily has. And again, it comes down to the same equation. Who'd want that aggravation? Who'd want the circus that goes with Neymar? There's always someone that would, but again, you look at the top 4 or 5 sides, because he's going to want to play for the big sides. Who in their construct would think Neymar was a useful addition? First of all, you'd have a transfer fee, then you'd have the ridiculous wages that go with it, then you have the entourage and all that goes around him. Does the Premier League need it? Well, it always likes a bit of stardust. There's always a bit of gold dust that you can sprinkle upon it, but it's pretty much got its hundreds of thousands sprinkled all over it anyway. So I don't see any of them, or either of those two, landing in the Premier League, and quite frankly, I don't care. You know, we've seen the best of Lionel Messi. We've got this world now where we can see television and watch football all day across the world, so we've not missed out. We've not seen him in the flesh. I saw him in the flesh in Qatar, but I think this Lionel Messi, this version, may well be off to the Middle East, collect his big bag of money and finish his career with ridiculous amounts of money being given to him because of the back catalogue of work that he's done. And Neymar, I don't know where he'll go and what he'll do, but he'll pitch up somewhere significant because he's a good player, but I just don't see it being in the Premier League. Right, that's it for this week's edition of One to One with Simon Jordan. Let me know your views on Man United and the race for the top 4, Declan Rice and Liverpool and their reaction to the national anthem. Don't forget to keep liking and subscribing. Don't forget to keep leaving your questions in the comment section below. And I'll see you soon.